Let's continue on with Kapitel 21. So we have some participial phrases for this unit. And then we will first go over the exercises from the end of the last unit. So, ein einmal in der Schule auswendig gelerntes Gedicht vergisst man schnell. So we have ein, that's an article, and then we look at all of this stuff, and this is not a noun at all. Einmal is not a noun. In der Schule is not a noun. It's a prepositional phrase. And so where is the noun that this belongs to? It's way over here, Gedicht. So it's a once in school memorized poem forgets one quickly, right? So, you forget quickly a poem that you once memorized in school is another way to say it, or a poem that one has memorized in school is quickly forgotten. So vergisst man schnell is quickly forgotten. One forgets quickly is quickly forgotten is another way to say it. It's just instead of man, we're just doing the passive. But then a poem that one has memorized in school, so that's the extended adjective construction. Ein einmal in der Schule auswendig gelerntes Gedicht, a poem that one has memorized in school. Yeah. Die Ärztin konnte dem alten, schon seit Jahren an Rheumatismus leidenden Mann endlich helfen. So, die Ärztin konnte, that's the normal, nothing strange going on there. The doctor was able to, and then dem alten, okay, so that's an article, that's an adjective, it seems normal, but then you would expect to get the noun pretty soon, right? But then instead of the noun, we're getting an adverb, we're getting a prepositional phrase, we're getting more prepositional phrases, and then another adjective, and then finally the noun. So it is, the doctor was finally able to help the old man who had been suffering for years with rheumatism. So literally it would be, the doctor was able to help the old, already for many years from rheumatism suffering man finally help. Yeah. So the doctor was able to finally help the old man who had been suffering for years with rheumatism. Yeah. Okay. War ein leider viel zu früh gestorbener Komponist. So he was a what? Componist. He was a composer. But what kind of a composer? He was an unfortunately much too early deceased composer. So he was a composer who unfortunately died much too early. So I've taken ein leider viel zu früh gestorbener and unfortunately much too early deceased, and I've changed that into a relative clause. He was a composer who unfortunately died much too early. Es gibt noch ein paar offen gebliebene Fragen. There are still a few questions that remain open, you could say. There are still a couple or a few open remaining questions, or open remained questions. Questions that remain open, yeah. Okay, so then we have some that are slightly more complex because they come from Kafka. So we have, hatte gerade einen Brief an einen sich im Ausland befindenden Jugendfreund beendet. So he had just finished a letter to a friend from his youth, right? To a friend from his youth, but what kind of a friend from his youth? We're going to add more information. To a located abroad friend from his youth, right? So he had just finished a letter to a childhood friend who was abroad, or maybe located abroad or living abroad. Befinden, sich befinden means to be located somewhere. And you just, to make it sound better, you can just say who was living abroad means the same thing, or just who was abroad to make it simpler, and it still retains the meaning. So the childhood friend, Jugendfreund, he finished a letter to to a friend who was abroad. So since we are in the past tense, he had finished. Er hatte beendet. That's actually that's the extra past, the Plusquamperfekt. So I had this in the past tense as well, who was living abroad. Okay, nun betrieb er ein Geschäft in Petersburg, das anfangs sich sehr gut angelassen hatte, seit langem aber schon zu stocken schien, wie der Freund bei seinen immer seltener werdenden Besuchen klagte. So, this first clause is a normal clause. There's not too much going on here. So, nun is just like now or then. It refers to the time. At that time or now, he operating, yeah, betreiben, to operate. Now he was operating a business. Now he was operating a business in Petersburg. That first sentence, or that first part of the sentence, the first clause, is not too tricky. Verb in the second position, we got to add verb in the first position, but otherwise nothing too interesting going on. And then, das anfangs sich sehr gut angelassen hatte, that's a relative clause. So it describes ein Geschäft, a business that had been shaping up well initially. So a business, ein Geschäft, and then das refers back to ein Geschäft, a business that had been shaping up well initially. And then, seit langem aber schon zu stocken schien. Okay, we still don't. This is still nothing to do with the extended adjective constructions, but seemed to be stagnating for a while. So for a while, seit langem, for since a long time, aber schon zu stocken schien. It seemed, the simple past, but it seemed to be stagnating for a while. As the friend complained in his visits, which were becoming more and more seldom. So this part is the one we're going to pay attention to for the adjective, instead of adjective constructions. Wie der Freund, so as the friend, bei, so that's all normal. Wie der Freund bei seinen, as the friend at his, or during his, I guess I have in his, during the visits, in the visits, immer seltener werdenden Besuchen klagte. So, seinen, that's a possessive, right? And normally we would expect a noun after that possessive. In his what? Well, his visits, Besuchen, bei seinen Besuchen, during his visits. But we want to add more information about the visits. What is it about the visits? The visits are becoming more and more seldom. Immer seltener werdenden. So, more and more seldom becoming visits. So this would really be literally during his ever more seldom becoming visits. And of course we did Emma. Emma plus a comparative means more and more, right? More and more seldom. So that's how we get. And then I made a relative clause out of it as well. Instead of just keeping it in front of the noun, like you would normally with the adjective, I made the whole thing into a relative clause. So his visits, as the friend, in his visits, and then I had complained here as well. That verb also needs to go there next to the subject, right? And then that last bit, the extended adjective construction, I just put as a relative clause at the end, which were becoming more and more seldom. Immer seltener werdenden Besuchen. Yeah. Okay, so now let's get to the participial phrases. This is another thing that you can do with participles. We've been working with participles last chapter as well. So participial phrases are constructions which in a present or a past participle occurs with modifiers to indicate time, manner, or cause. So they refer to the subject, the sentence generally, and then the participial phrases are often set off by commas in order to make the meaning clearer. Very similar to the way we do in English. So note that the present or past participle is the last element of the German construction, but it's translated first in English. You might be used to this by now, that when you translate, you have to change the word order quite drastically. So let's look at some examples. Von seinem Treffen mit dem Bundeskanzler zurückkehrend, rief der Präsident seine Berater zusammen. So returning from his meeting with the chancellor, it's the president called, his advisors together. So let's translate word for word. From his meeting with the chancellor coming back, called the president his advisors together. So it's actually not that different from the way we use it in English. So zurückkehrend is the present participle. We just put the D on the end of the infinitive to make it present participle. But the major change is that in English, we have that first, and then in German, you have that at the end of the participial phrase. So it's just one major change. You just take that present participle, and you put it to the front, and you're basically done. Returning from his meeting from the Chancellor, von seinem Treffen mit dem Bundeskanzler zurückkehrend. Ja. In der neuen Welt angekommen, versuchten die Vertriebenen, ein neues Leben zu beginnen. Having arrived in the new world, the exiles tried to begin a new life. So if we have, this first one was a present participle, so that's returning, present. But this one is a past participle, so instead of doing present, obviously we need to do a past participle. And if it were going to be the exact same translation we did here, but in the past it would be arrived in the new world, the exiles tried to begin a new life. And that actually sounds all right. That seems within the realm of real English. Arrived in the new world, then this, right? But having arrived in the new world makes it extra clear, I think. So I think either is fine. Arrived in the new world seems fine. Or having arrived in the new world. And that just makes it really clear that we're in the past, and it just makes it a little bit clearer what's going on, I think. Okay, so we have manner, right? These ones were time. These talking about time. And these ones are talking about manner, how something is done. So, eine Politik der Verbundenheit mit Westberlin fördernd entschied sich Präsident Truman im Mai 1948 für die Berliner Luftbrücke. Promoting a policy of solidarity with West Berlin, President Truman decided in May 1948 on the Berlin airlift. So, promoting fördernd. So, fördern is to promote, or to, basically, or to support. And then, so we have our present participle, and then we're also translating it as a present participle, and then we're just putting that at the front. Promoting a policy of solidarity with West Berlin. So everything else actually stays in the same order. You just take that present participle, put it to the front. And everything else you translate as normal. Die Warnung der Sowjets ignorierend versorgten die Amerikaner Berlin durch die Luftbrücke mit Lebensmitteln. So now we have our present participle right here. Ignorierend. So the D is on there, making it a present participle. And so to translate, you just move it to the front and say, ignoring the warnings of the Soviets, and everything else stays the same. And then you just translate the other clause as you normally would. Yeah. And then indicating a cause, it can also be used this way. This one's going to be in the past. So, von allen Frieden liebenden Nationen abgeschnitten, fand der Kriegsführer keine neuen Verbündeten. So, abgeschnitten is from abschneiden, to cut off. So it's a past participle. In English, this is the past as well, to cut and cut. I have cut. He was cut off. So it's also, that's a past participle, even though it looks like the present, but it's actually a past participle in English too. So we have cut off, which is abgeschnitten. Move that to the front. Cut off from all peace-loving nations. This is actually a very small, extended adjective construction. Peace-loving nations. So technically it is one of those extended adjective constructions because this is an adjective and this is a kind of a direct object. So nations love peace, right? Direct object. And in this case, since this is already a phrase in English, peace-loving, you can actually translate it that way. But if you didn't want to do that, you could do the thing with the relative clause and say, cut off from all nations that love peace. You could. But since peace-loving is the thing we say in English, it sounds a lot better. Fand der Kriegsführer keine neue Verbündete. And the rest is just the warlord, the war leader, found no new allies. So that's just normal, yeah. Endlich unterschrieben, konnte der Vertrag für gültig erklärt werden. Having finally been signed. So this one is, literally it's just finally signed. This is past participle. Finally signed, the treaty could be considered valid. I think that's fine to say finally signed, right? But this is maybe a little more elegant and a little more clear what's going on, having finally been signed. But I think either is fine. Okay, so that's a pretty quick unit. And in the end of this chapter, you have exercises that will contain some of these structures for you to translate. So have lots of fun translating, and we'll see each other in our next Zoom meeting. And of course, I'll see you in the video for the next chapter. Vielen Dank. Tschüss. Auf Wiedersehen.